Hi everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Dr. Shadia Rafage, and we're going to be focusing on veterinary telehealth and how we can improve work-life balance and the workflow of your facility. First, a little bit about me for those who don't know. I graduated from Cornell University as a veterinarian in 2006. I did a one-year general internship in Boston at Angel Animal Medical Center. After that, I did 2 surgical internships, followed by a 3-year residency, became board certified in small animal surgery. From there, I moved out west, joined a hospital in Las Vegas, then ran 3 hospitals in Silicon Valley, followed by being part owner of a hospital in Los Angeles before coming back to Las Vegas and starting VetTriage. These are the aspects here we're going to review. We're going to start off with how VetTriage came to be, definitions of telehealth, some of the principles behind various telehealth platforms. We're going to talk about where VetTriage stands today as far as the statistics. We'll talk about all the issues that we're facing currently in the veterinary field. We'll go over some publications, talk about the pillars of veterinary medicine, go over an example session, and then finally what we end up seeing on the actual field in brick and mortar when they partner with VetTriage. So initially, the idea of VetTriage came about 15 years ago now, if not more. I had noticed the receptionists at the veterinary hospitals were taking on lots of phone calls 24 hours a day, fielding clients' concerns. People were asking the question of, should I come in? How worried should I be? And so my thought was, what if you had doctors actually on videos answering these questions for these clients? So that then turned into, from a phone platform to video. If you look at this comment here, if you are concerned, come in, which everybody here, because you've been in the field for long enough, you're aware of this. This premise doesn't help persuade people to not come to the hospital needlessly. If your concern come in is an open door policy, just come on in. But the problem is you can't have a licensed veterinary technician or a doctor on the phone because they're busy. And so the receptionists who are not medically trained are the ones who are fielding these calls. So the standard answer was, well, if you're concerned, come in. Then if you combine that mentality with the COVID-19 pandemic where adoptions went up, turnover was higher, retaining staff members at veterinary clinics was more difficult, all the frustrations dealing with masks and not being allowed to enter the hospital, all those things combined with the over 2 decades of telling people if you're concerned, come in, create a cultural toxicity in the workplace. And after the pandemic, we ended up seeing the veterinary shortages, all the challenges we're dealing with today, difficulty with clients accessing care, spectrum of care, all those aspects came slowly over time, but the pandemic certainly accelerated it. And so VetTriage was my answer to this problem. Everybody's concerned about definitions, as you should be, and the definitions matter. The problem with definitions is that they're not across the board agreed upon or used the same way, and that's a problem. We have to rely on definitions to know what we're talking about. So when you look at the American Veterinary Medical Association, they define teletriage and teleadvice as branches of telehealth that do not require VCPR. That's great. That's what VetTriage is, teletriage, teleadvice. We're not performing telemedicine, which requires a VCPR. For those of you who don't know, VCPR is veterinary client-patient relationship. That VCPR is established in person when a pet owner and the pet meets the veterinarian. That physical interaction is what establishes the agreement that that doctor will now be in charge of taking care of that pet, and that pet owner has agreed to follow the doctor's instructions. That VCPR is created in person. Obviously, if you're providing virtual care, you can't be in person. And so the question is, where does VCPR play a role here? Well, if you're performing telehealth in a brick and mortar within a VCPR, then you're allowed to provide virtual care thereafter. Teletriage, teleadvice does not require a VCPR, and that's where VetTriage comes into play. The overarching term to mean anything virtual when it comes to a doctor and patient relationship is termed telehealth. That's the overarching term, not telemedicine. Frequently you'll hear and see and read people using telemedicine and telehealth synonymously. They're not synonymous, they're not the same thing. All telemedicine is telehealth, but not all telehealth is telemedicine. And so telehealth is the overarching term, it's the umbrella term that establishes veterinary healthcare services in relation to the public health. It uses telecommunication technologies to do all these doctor things, and the client or patient is at a different location physically. That's telehealth. When you break down telehealth to all subcategories, just like in that picture from the AVMA, teletriage and teleadvice are two categories of telehealth. And that's where VetTriage lies, because that's where the problem is in the profession, is triaging and advice, and also it does not require the VCPR. Teletriage is the timely assessment and management to assess or determine urgency, immediate referral to a vet or not. That's triage, do you have an emergency or not? Teleadvice, non-specific general information regarding the patient. So if you don't have an emergency, here's my advice. If you do have an emergency, here's my advice. This is an example of a flyer that we create for our partners. So for example, Cornell University has been partnered with us now for years. We are their level 1 triage. No case goes to Cornell until they come through us first. We deem it appropriate for emergency care, then we contact Cornell to set up the relationship with the client to physically be there, because Cornell may not have the capacity or whatever it is. All the challenges that we're familiar with. So we create flyers for our partners. It has the partner landing page, the QR codes to our landing page. It's got the logo for the partner as well, the steps to connect with our doctors, a short summary for why we exist and why Cornell is using us. And these flyers can be shared to clients either at checkout, they can be printed and handed out to people, shared on social media, newsletters, email blasts, all on the website. And so we customize flyers for our partners so they can share. Next topic is going to be the different types of virtual care platforms that are out there in the vet space. And although gold standard would be veterinarian 24/7 live video, there are options out there, and some are okay options, some not so great. It just depends on what you're looking for. But just realize these things. Are you dealing with a telehealth software that you're going to use in your facility, or are you talking about an external platform outside of the brick and mortar facility? And if it is external, well, it's going to be non-video or video, right? Those are two very different ways of assessing pets. Within brick and mortar, outside brick and mortar, third party, are you going to be asynchronous, where there's a delay in the communication between doctor and patient? So a good example of this is text messaging or emailing. The client sends out a question, the vet responds, the client responds, back and forth, but it's not in real time. It's not synchronous. Synchronous is live video. You're on live with the client and the pet on video, so you can talk to them and see them in real time. A telephone call would be considered synchronous as well, but not video, but it'd be considered synchronous. It's in real time. You're talking to somebody in real time to get the information. Anything else is considered asynchronous. Are you going to be utilizing veterinarians or veterinary technicians? Are you going to house specialists and GPs? What type of telehealth are you providing? Teletriage, teleadvice, telemedicine, teleconsulting, telediagnostics? And then what species are you going to manage? Are you directing this platform to the consumer or to the business? Or VetTriage is from business to consumer. We work through partnerships with facilities. We are a friend of the facility. We're an adjunct tool to the facility. We help we're an extension of their hospital, and so we are seen as on the same team, not opposing forces. But it depends on what kind of model you're talking about here. And then hours of operation. Are you going to go 24/7, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, weekends, holidays only? All these things play a role in looking at on virtual platforms. And I would argue there is a gold standard. Most platforms are not going to meet the gold standard that VetTriage meets. Here's an example of Cornell's website. So if a client goes to their website, they'll see here VetTriage. You think you have an emergency, and if you do, click here, and that brings them to that landing page for Cornell, and then the client knows they're at the right place. The receptionists at the front desk will direct clients to this as phone calls come in and say, you know what, we're reaching capacity. We don't have the staff right now. We can't see you unless VetTriage talks to you first. Go to our website, click on VetTriage, follow the instructions. So where does VetTriage stand currently? We've actually exceeded 100,000 cases now. We've been utilized by over 20 different countries. We've triaged almost 40 different animal types. We've got around 70, give or take, veterinarians on staff, about half a dozen support staff, most of which are licensed veterinary technicians. We're operational 24/7. We have hundreds of partners all across the world. We launched a Spanish-speaking platform in 2022, an equine platform in 2023, and we are actively publishing papers. We'll talk about our first paper we published here in a minute. but you'll be hard pressed to find other platforms that have these types of numbers, and we just continue to grow every month, every year. Now we'll move on to the challenges that we're facing in the field. Everybody here is familiar with these challenges. We've all seen them either directly or indirectly, but we'll go through them, set up a foundation here, and then towards the end we'll talk about how VetTriage can actually help these issues. We've seen an increase in veterinary school admissions by 6 to 7% every single year consistently. During the pandemic, it jumped by 19%. So more than double increase in admissions to vet schools during the pandemic. Also, the veterinary field grew as a result of this by 17% in 2020, adding almost 15,000 new doctors to the field, and VetTriage has well over 100 applicants waiting for work. The reason why I mention this is because we talk about a shortage, and there is a shortage. However, the shortage is not absolute, it's relative. So the absolute number of vets is higher than ever. We have the largest number of vet schools in our history. The class sizes have never been larger. We have the largest number of people who want to be veterinarians in our history, but yet where are the veterinarians? There's a relative shortage where they graduate vet school and for some reason they change careers. They just don't follow through with being a veterinarian. And so that's why I've been stressing now for years that we have a relative shortage, not absolute shortage. Suicide rates, compassion fatigue. Veterinarians are 2.7 times more likely to attempt suicide versus non-veterinarians. 7.5% of veterinarians thought about committing suicide in 2020. Almost 1.5% have planned it. Less than 0.2 have attempted. This is tied into an unhealthy psychological status, found to be unhealthy in 6.4% of vets in 2019 and went up to almost 10% in 2021. Compassion fatigue, work-life imbalance, cultural toxicity all play a role with suicide rates, and this is of course a major problem in the field. Staff turnover. The most common challenges veterinarians report in the workplace is mental health issues. No surprise there when you look at the high suicide rates and compassion fatigue in the field. The combination of being in debt, 88%, staff shortages, over 90%. These are frustrations in the field. These are things that are causing a problem in the workplace where veterinarians are not enjoying what they're doing. These are challenges that they're facing. The burnout rate in 2021 for veterinarians, 30%. The burnout rate for staff members, 50%. The average veterinary team experiences 23% turnover annually, versus an annual turnover rate for the hospitality industry in general being 12 to 15%. We have almost double the turnover compared to other industries, almost double in the medical field. Next up, the new grads. The new grads are going to replace those who are retiring from the field. The problem is we have veterinarians that are retiring at a faster rate than veterinarians are joining the profession in that relative shortage issue we spoke about. The satisfaction incidence with work-life balance in veterinary medicine is 40%, but in the general population is 60%. We have an overall dissatisfaction compared to the general public when it comes to work-life balance. Why is this happening? Vets don't enjoy work for all the reasons we just mentioned. They don't find work invigorating. They have personal conflicts at work. These are all reasons why veterinarians are not enjoying what they do. There are other factors, of course: debt, low income, work stress, cyberbullying. And we all are aware of social media and its effects on the younger population. We are now seeing the Generation Z will be entering the workforce, and they grew up with technology even more so than millennials. And we all know that the struggles that millennials have faced in the work field, in all aspects of work. And so Gen Z presumably will be even worse than that. So these challenges are not going to go away anytime soon, and I'm worried they're going to actually become amplified. The debt-to-income ratio is a number that studies will use to show basically how concerned should you be with the level of debt you have. A ratio of less than 1.4 to 1 implies no serious financial stress. Well, in veterinary medicine and the equine side, it's 3.7. It's an insanely high ratio on the equine side. I imagine it's mirrored pretty similarly in the small animal side. Gen Zs, 75% consider the workplace flexibility to be the most important benefit. A benefit. Not health care, not vacation time, not continuing education. A benefit is work-life balance. That's what they want, flexibility. 75% want that. And anybody here who practices in the field knows that flexibility is not something that we have in the field. Satisfaction with work-life balance in veterinary medicine is about 40% versus 60% in general. We've already mentioned that. And we've already mentioned all the factors that we're dealing with that. Finally, a big one, and this is the goal of VetTriage, is emergency coverage. And a lot of these numbers are on the large animal side because they have to provide their own emergency care. They don't have the luxury like small animal does, usually luxury, of referring cases after hours to an emergency hospital. They have to be on call, and that's for many factors. But these animals are large and they require transit, or they require a veterinarian to visit the premises. Someone's got to be on call. And so these numbers are from the large animal side, but it'll just speak to how much of a challenge this is in the field. 35% have support staff that visit, that join the veterinarians during the ambulatory calls. 50% do not use support staff. So right off the bat, you've got veterinarians going out in the middle of the night in inclement weather, driving to someone's location with no support staff with them. No one for protection, nobody to manage horses that are unruly, helping with procedures. 77% have a service area radius of up to 60 miles. 22% cover more than 61 miles. So that's at least an hour of driving, assuming that entire road is a highway and the weather is fine. That's at least an hour of driving. And in most places where these folks live, it's not a straight shot road and a highway. There's curves and smaller back roads and bad weather. And you're driving in the middle of the night. So this mileage is insane. And so it's out of necessity because these veterinary hospitals can't send their cases anywhere else for a long distance away. Over 90% charge a farm call or trip fee. 90% charge an emergency fee plus a trip charge. Fair enough. In 2021, over 50% of equine practices have less than 2 doctors. So usually that means you're going to be on call either half or all the time because you don't have enough doctors to be on call. During the busiest quarter, if you look at the number of hours per week worked, every year it's gone up. So we're at 68 hours per week for 2021 grads. So they're working 5.3 days per week, and that's during the busiest times. But even during the least busiest times, it's still over 40 hours a week that they're working. Compensation from emergency visits. 25 to 40% receive no compensation when they visit someone in the middle of the night for an emergency in large animal. No compensation. 32% will receive 100% of the fees from the client. That's insane. So not only did you lose sleep and risk your life driving to the facility, to the person's home, but you're also not being compensated adequately for it. So those are all the problems we're facing in the field, and this is not news to anybody here, but this is what we're dealing with and the reason why VetTriage exists. So one of the goals of VetTriage was to provide objective information through medical papers. Our first paper was published December of 2023. We looked at 15 novel animal types, species, that were triaged for the first time in veterinary history. We made a case series on that, showing the benefits of triaging for these animal types. And the animal types that we had: squirrel, sugar glider, plecofish, tortoise, chinchilla, sea otter, etc. Very cool, unique species, never been published before, at least at the time of writing this, and we published it in Frontier Veterinary Science, so feel free to check that out. But first paper of its kind, and these are just screenshots of me performing the triaging on these different animal types. I felt it was important to have the same doctor on for every single one of these cases in order to eliminate confounding factors, and so I was the only doctor on doing these unique cases, and so these are just pictures from the cases themselves. Now, the hospital process. So the partnership with VetTriage, the goal here is to provide work-life balance for your staff, provide access and spectrum of care to your clients. And it's a win-win for all involved. But there's a process to get started. It's very easy. If your facility is interested in joining VetTriage, first we'll set up a meeting to figure out how your hospital operates currently, what species you're working with, what's your after hours on call like, what is your demographic of clients like. Then I'll have you fill out the protocol. It's a 1.5 to 2 page Word document. We have one for equine, one for non-equine. You'll send me a logo of your facility. We don't have any contracts or agreements, and we do not charge you a thing for the partnership. Your clients will pay VetTriage directly when they want veterinary advice during daytime hours, or most often after hours, holidays, and weekends. We will then create a unique landing page for your facility. So it'll be vettriage.com/hospital name. We'll create those flyers I showed you. We'll finalize your protocols, and then your team will add a VetTriage logo and the landing page to your website. You'll share the information with clients. You'll change your voicemail and email auto-response, social media posts, and then maybe about a 1 week lead time for your clients, enough to give them fair warning that you're going to be joining VetTriage, and here are the reasons why. We have scripts for all this stuff as well that you can use and modify for your facility to fit your client demographic, because only you know your clients best, and you'll let them know ahead of time that you're joining VetTriage. The reasonable client will be ecstatic. The few that grumble, which they always will, are the same people who will call you in the middle of the night and talk your ear off for a non-emergency for free over the phone. And so that's fine. Those clients want to be upset, that's okay. The majority of clients will look at this and say, wow, that's so cool, so convenient. I would love to talk to a veterinarian in my own home, on the phone, in a matter of minutes. Example of that flyer that I showed you earlier, we'll make one for your facility. This is our logo for non-equine. It's got the paw print. This is for equine with the horseshoe. This is another example of a partner. This one's located in Hawaii. So you can imagine that Hawaii is a very unique geographic challenge there, right? Because they're in islands, and if you have a large animal and there's nobody on call on that island at that time, they're not flying to another island. Similarly, if you have a small animal emergency and no one's on call on that island, you have to fly to the next island over to get emergency care. And so most of the clinics there have to be mixed practice. So this hospital has on their website, they scroll down to the bottom, the client will see the VetTriage logo, a paragraph as far as why they're using us, and then push a button and connect with the doctor, and then they're on with us in a matter of minutes. Once the client clicks on that button, it'll bring them to the landing page. Landing page is vettriage.com/your-hospital name. We create it for you. So here's another example. These are a veterinary clinic. They're a mixed animal. So we have your logo on the landing page, another paragraph as far as why we exist, connection instructions at the bottom. Then your client, when they scroll to the bottom of the page, they'll fill out a form. If you notice on here, all we're asking for is email, first name, last name, phone number, prefer English or Spanish, and is this for a horse, yes or no. If you notice on here, there's no other signalment information, no clinical signs, nothing like that. And the reason for that is because we're dealing with potentially true emergencies. We want to make sure that we minimize the amount of time it takes for a client to join VetTriage. We also want to make sure that the client who's stressed out and anxious doesn't freak out when they have to fill in more spots on the website. So we make this very simple for them. Those who've used this in the past can go right to this existing customer and just log in. And then they're even faster. We want this process to be very quick. The email address for your clients is only used to share with them the summary of the advice given. The phone number is only used for technical support. The person's internet dies, or their computer dies, whatever it may be, we can at least still reach them for support. We work with a lot of folks who are in very rural areas. Not everybody has video capabilities. Some people have to call in to pay over the phone and talk to our vet over the phone, but 99% of these cases are going to be live video. This is another example of a mixed animal practice that uses us. So just an example of the logo. Here's the paragraph, the steps to connect, and when you scroll to the bottom, the client will fill out the form and be on with the doctor. So here's just a live video of the process for a client to sign up for VetTriage. They'll scroll to the bottom, they'll fill in their email address. And so our platform is agnostic to any device. It can be on a smartphone, a tablet, a computer, a laptop, or a desktop laptop. If they don't have video capabilities, we're going to share with you a 1-800 number. They can call us and pay over the phone and then talk to the doctor that way. For images, so you see there the client clicked on step 2, then a disclaimer pops up before they pay that explains what VCPR is and how we're not establishing that, also acknowledging the limitations of virtual care. They have various modes of payment. They choose their mode of payment. This is the equine side, that's why you see a horse here, and that's why it's $75, because the equine sessions are $75. But once they push step 2, pay, step 3 will pop up, and then they click and they're on with the veterinarian within less than 2 minutes. So this is an example of the disclaimer, the payment options, they'll click step 3, and then they're on. So just to summarize, if your facility is interested in partnering with us, we'll set up a meeting, fill out the protocols, and then we'll create the landing page and flyers for you, finalize the protocol, you add us on your website and voicemails and emails, and then we're live from there. So you might ask, why would I partner with you guys? What's the benefit? Currently, and this is the large animal side, but it applies to small animal as well. The current workflow is a pet owner has a concern after hours. There's an on-call doctor or an answering service. So the on-call doctor is giving their clients their phone number, which is less than ideal, or using an answering service to protect their phone number, but that answering service delays the process. They're not medically trained. They're very frustrating to deal with. They cost you money, and they're still just going to transfer the client to you anyway. They're not really solving the problem. So the doctor answers. They take every single call, determine if it's an emergency or not. So they triage. If it's not an emergency, you'll give some kind of advice and then try to get rest before your next day. If it is an emergency, the on-call has to drive to the location, or the horse is trailered in, or if you're a small animal, you're going to meet the client at the facility to handle that emergency. And then you're back home to try to get some sleep before you work the next day. And you may get another call after that. We find that well over 80% of our video sessions are not emergencies. And so we can cut out at least 80% of these calls that are coming to you that are not actual emergencies. And if you do have an actual emergency, you'll be contacted by VetTriage, not the client, and our medical staff will talk to you, the on-call person, about the case, answer any questions you have, and then set up the meeting however you desire. So this workflow is not sustainable, clearly, because of the problems we're dealing with currently in the field. Hospital team is not getting enough rest. Burnout rates are too high, so it's difficult to recruit new staff members. The costs outweigh the fees earned from emergency care. All this stuff costs money, guys. Whenever you talk about turnover rates and capacity fatigue, all this stuff costs money, direct and indirect, but it costs you something. No revenue is generated from answering non-emergency calls. All you do is lose sleep in this scenario, and there are safety concerns when you're driving to remote locations, whether it be to the clinic or to the person's place of residence. So when you implement VetTriage, this is the new workflow. The pet owner has a concern after hours. They connect with VetTriage. VetTriage will triage them. If it's not an emergency, which is the majority of cases, we're going to give the owner advice and monitoring parameters with instructions to follow up with the family veterinarian. We don't want them to stay with us. We want them to go back to you, but go back to you as a scheduled appointment on your own terms, not in the middle of the night for an unnecessary emergency call. If it is an emergency, our veterinarians will have the client agree to the emergency fees, find out how far they live from the hospital, and then we'll call the on-call doctor to coordinate the care from there, whether it be having you meet the client at the facility or you're driving out there if you're a large animal. But regardless, the veterinarian will have the case packaged for you. That way, when we do call you in the middle of the night for an emergency, you know it's already been vetted by a veterinarian. The case has been summarized for you. Client expectations are set, so you simply have to meet them and then do your life-saving vet stuff. But that's the idea here. This allows the hospital team to get rest. The on-call doctor is now only contacted for true emergencies. This expands care, access to care to hospital clients. So clients, for example, that have limitations after hours, they can't afford your emergency fees, they don't have a car, there's bad weather outside, their animal is fractious, the animal is prone to stress. All those things. The person can't drive at night. They're geriatric, right? They're traveling with their pet, and you're not physically there, but they want to talk to somebody. So this helps with access to care for clients who don't have emergency options. This avoids unnecessary emergency visits. It improves workplace culture and recruitment efforts. Provides a tailored after-hour solution for geographic and other challenges unique to the hospital. Those protocols that you create for VetTriage, they can be as nuanced as you like, and we will take into account your geographic limitations, your client demographics, however it is that your hospital operates, what species you're seeing, what your hours of operation, during hours, after hours, all that stuff will be situated in your protocols. We'll follow your protocols. It's that way we are an extension of your facility, and you don't have to worry about your clients being told something different than how you normally would operate. So with all that being said, the way I view telehealth in its place in veterinary profession is right here. It connects the ER doctors with GPs, rescues and shelters use us, specialists. We can bridge the gap between all these facilities, especially when you talk about emergency care, and we can bridge the gap. And just a reminder again of that, no VCPR is required when you're talking about tele-triage, tele-advice, and that's why we can operate the way we do. This is an example session. I have to fix that. So this is an example session of a cat that was known to be pregnant. She was showing some weird signs at home. The client got the veterinarian, VetTriage on video, talked about the symptoms they're seeing, determined it to be normal parturition. The cat would probably whelp soon, and we told the client, if you see these symptoms of dystocia, you're going to let us know, we'll call you in. Right now there's no evidence of dystocia, no evidence that the cat is struggling at all for any reason on video, and so let us know how things go. A few hours later we get an email with a picture of mama cat and her kittens. This case did not have to go to ER. It was going to stress out the mom, obviously cause stress on the kittens, especially during the whelping process. The emergency hospital did not need to see this case when they're dealing with other true emergencies. And so this is a perfect example of how triage and advice can work. So finally, what are the benefits of VetTriage? What are you going to see on the floor? And this is from now almost 5 years of VetTriage. This is what we see from the mouths of partnerships. This is what the clinics tell us. They have improved retention, less turnover. It's easier time hiring. We've literally had hospitals say, I'm leveraging your services to entice this doctor to join our team because we provide on-call, and on-call sucks. Nobody wants to do it. So if we can partner with VetTriage and tell our doctors, look, your calls will be cut down by 80% plus, it's more likely they're going to join our team. You'll have less revenue loss from headhunting and training. You have a more cohesive team. You'll improve the hospital culture because compassion fatigue will be less. Your clinic can decide what type of work quantity you want. Where's your stress level that day? How many staff members have called out sick? Do you have an unexpected surgery at lunchtime? Do you have 5 walk-ins right when you open up? All these factors determine how your day is going to go. Well, you can leverage VetTriage and tailor the cases. And what that does is it helps with compassion fatigue. It helps with individual patient care, so your staff can focus on the patients that are actually there. Any other clients can be sent over to VetTriage. We're going to triage them. They're probably not emergencies. We'll give the client peace of mind and advice and send you the medical notes. That way you know what occurred. The leadership team can be viewed as being caring to support staff, and you'll have improved client online reviews, especially when you talk about emergency hospitals. All the online reviews of my dog died while waiting in the car because they took 6 hours to get to me. I was there for 12 hours. There are wait times of 72 hours, so we can eliminate those online reviews as well. For new veterinary graduates, you can customize the caseload to the veterinary experience level and to the amount of staff present. So this is important. If you have a veterinarian working at your ER facility and they've only been out of school for a year or two, they're not going to be as efficient as a seasoned senior veterinarian. So they may want a lower caseload, and so would you as the hospital owner. You don't want cases being mismanaged because the veterinarian who's trying their best is overwhelmed, understaffed. And so you can triage cases, you can send cases to VetTriage. We'll call in the ones that should be there, and your doctor can gain more experience with those cases, tailor the environment to what they can handle. Over time, as they get more experience, they can handle more cases, send less cases to VetTriage. That's how it works. You control the momentum here. The leadership appears empathetic, and you have more individual case focus. We've all had this happen to us. If you've worked in any intensive care unit in a veterinary hospital, you've got 3 or 4 critical patients, all receiving lots of treatments around the clock, and then a bouncing, barking, obnoxious puppy with limping comes in, and now that takes at least 2 or 3 staff members away from the critical patients to handle this dog, to get a physical exam done, get your TPR, and then diagnostics if you're going to have x-rays done in the middle of the night at an emergency hospital for a dog that's obnoxious, not critical, barking up a storm, taking up your staff, and you have actual sick animals there. triage these things, get them away, and we'll triage them away for you. Individual facility solutions. We're going to customize the protocols for your facility. We're going to have this tailored to your client demographics. Everything can be unique to your own hospital operations, and we can adapt to your geographic challenges. So common questions we get for VetTriage is, what about VCPR? Well, we are teletriage, teleadvice. We're not telemedicine, we're not establishing that VCPR. The clients can't stay with us. They have to go somewhere. They're either going to go to ER or they're going to go to your family vet for an appointment, but you're not staying with us. We're here for triage and for advice. Yeah, but doc, my clients need me. You know, these clients ought to be tied to the practice and not the practitioner, and we are an extension of your practice. The client does need you and your staff, but rest it. They need and want a compassionate vet to help them regardless of the source. That's the idea here. When they get on video with our doctors, they immediately relax and they can talk to a professional who's compassionate, empathetic, knowledgeable, get the advice they need. How long is the process for my client to get on with a veterinarian? Less than 1 minute to log in and pay. Average wait is 2 minutes or less. My clients are used to being able to call me directly anytime. We need to have a culture shift. The only way we're going to improve your work-life balance and access to spectrum of care is by relinquishing this unrequired connection to our clients. You can still provide emergency access to veterinarians after hours through VetTriage. They don't need you to do that anymore. This has to stop. And this cultural shift is much more difficult to change in the equine side because they've been on call forever and giving out their cell phone numbers forever, versus the small animal side, which usually they're ready to let go of this goal. Not everybody though, and we need this culture shift to change. That's the biggest difficulty with this. The biggest impediment to this is veterinarians. Funny enough, because veterinarians are the ones who are dealing with all these problems, and yet the main thing that they need to do is let go of this rule here, the stipulation, in order to have a better quality of life. Okay. What if my clients skip us and use VetTriage? It hasn't happened. During operating hours, this has not been reported. When given the option, your clients will always want to see you in person. So if they call you when you answer the phone, you guys are open, they want to see you and you can see them if you can fit them in. Clients will only use VetTriage when they need to use VetTriage. You're not available or you're doing on call through us, then they'll use us. Otherwise, a client will not preferentially skip you to come to us. It's never happened. Well, my hospital has specific stipulations and a unique geographic location. We have these protocols that are written by you. We're going to honor your protocols. We have a document hub internally that are filled with a whole bunch of unique information for our veterinarians, whether it's you're coming from Australia or Florida, whether you're dealing with the toxicity of marijuana or some crazy combination of human drugs, whatever it may be, we have internal resources to help our doctors out. We also are partnered with Pet Poison Helpline, so PPH helps us a lot for those cases of toxicities that are unusual. But the point is we have internal documents for our veterinarians. We also have a live chat between all of our veterinarians. They can bounce ideas off each other, get opinions, consult with each other to try and get the best care for that client, that pet, as we can. What about follow-up questions and concerns, or maybe the pet's condition changes? Clients can reach out to us after the triage session at no charge for as many times as they want until you're open again. We want to make sure that you take care of your client, not just at the moment of the triage, but also that their hands are being held the entire night, weekend, holiday, whatever it is. That way they don't feel alone. But we also don't feel right charging them every single time they have a question for us. So once they establish the video session with our doctors, then we will take care of your client with any questions or concerns, re-triage their pet until you're open again. Once you're open again, it's presumed that you're going to take that client over, schedule an appointment with them, and then see them in person for veterinary care. So they can call or email us anytime. There's no additional cost of doing this, and we will take care of your clients until you're operational again. Yeah, but my hospital performs triage for free right now. Well, there's legal and ethical concerns with this. If you're triaging over the phone, first of all, it's probably not the veterinarian or even a licensed veterinary technician. It's a receptionist or a CSR doing this, so they're not medically trained. So that already poses risk for you. Plus, you don't know that client if they're not established with you, and if they are established with you from prior, you don't know what's going on with that pet other than a verbal discussion. There's no images, no videos. There's no way to see that pet, and you're triaging things over the phone. with people who are not medically trained and who don't have all the access to information that we would on VetTriage with live video. This is also an inefficient use of your team. Your team that actually can triage, which are doctors and technicians, they're much more useful to you on the floor, using their hands to save lives, not on the phone trying to figure out, is this an allergic reaction or is this a hypovolemic shock? They don't need to figure that stuff out anymore. Use them on the floor, have VetTriage take care of clients otherwise. You aren't even charging for the resource you're committing to it. If you have a veterinary technician who's triaging over the phone, well, you're not making any money from that case, and chances are that case with the phone is not going to be an emergency. And chances are, if it is an emergency, you might be at capacity or understaffed. So you're only losing resources by having that veterinary technician devoted to that phone. Even worse if they're a doctor answering the phone. Triage is by phone, no access to videos and pictures, and the veterinarian technician is likely not performing the triage. So I would say hang this up, stop triaging on your own, and have VetTriage do it for you. What about triaging categories? Are they useful? What about urgent care? I'll give you my thoughts on urgent care here on the next slide. But the problem with this system is that it relies on the client to determine whether or not they have an emergency, an urgent care, or none of the above. And we can't depend on the client to do that. They're not medically trained. They're not going to be able to determine this, at least enough to help your hospital situation out. If you yourself decide to join our team, you're more than welcome to. We have to have a conversation. Send me your resume. We'll set up a video meeting and go from there. We are slow to hire. I want the best veterinarians working for us, and I realize how difficult it is for veterinary hospitals to retain their staff. We in no way, shape, or form aim at targeting your staff to hire VetTriage. In fact, if they are coming from a partner of ours, we make sure that veterinarian has disclosed to us that the establishment is aware they are looking at virtual work. If they do not have that, we can't have a conversation. Your staff is too valuable and too hard to come by, and we have plenty of applicants for VetTriage. We're not looking for that. But if you're in a place in your career where you're looking for that type of work, feel free to reach out to me. So here's my thoughts on urgent care, which is the newest development. It's commonplace on the human side, but human beings also can speak on their own behalfs, and with animals, it's not as clear cut that the client can understand things. So this is an example of an attempt at trying to slow down emergency visitations to the hospital. The levels here are based on how urgent the pet is. The client reads this on a website and says, okay, what's my pet doing? Is it non-urgent, urgent, significant, life-threatening? And then based on that, your hospital can say, well, we're only taking level 2 and above. But the client still has to determine this. Plus, we all know this, a not eating situation is urgent or not urgent, but if you have a cat that hasn't eaten for 5 days and now is at risk of hepatic lipidosis, that's an emergency now, right? But not eating for a meal is probably not an emergency. So how do you want the client to determine this? Seizures. There's a difference between having focal facial seizures and having grand mal seizures. Well, if you're just going to put on here a seizure is a seizure, I mean, that depends. A lot of variability there. You want the client to determine that? It doesn't make any sense. Trauma is considered significant. Well, trauma could be I stepped on my dog's paw by accident. That's trauma. Or it could be hit by a car or jump out of a window or a gunshot wound. And we've all seen hit by cars that are completely stable and don't need to be in an emergency hospital. So this type of system relies too heavily on the client. They're not medically trained. I'm not convinced the urgent care model is going to work. I think what's going to happen is it's going to become just another version of emergency, and that's we'll be back to square one. So, what about the workflow of VetTriage? You are giving out your cell phone currently, or using a call center or answering service. We will replace your cell phone. We're replacing the answering service. All the records will be emailed to your hospital. Date and timestamps when the session was completed. If the case is ER, we're gonna package it for the on-call doctor, or call the emergency hospital and organize visitation. That way it's less stressful for the client, and the veterinary staff member at that emergency hospital or the on-call veterinarian will know everything that's going on with that case. We always are going to make recommendations for follow-up. We're always going to tell the client, see your family veterinarian in the next 3 days, the next 2 weeks, the next month for follow-up. And then when your staff gets the records from VetTriage, you can have the front desk call VetTriage or call the client and find out how Fluffy is doing after their call from Saturday night with VetTriage. And and then coordinate an appointment. And your staff can decide, do you want to see that person at 8:01 Monday morning, or do you want to see them next Thursday for a drop-off? Up to you how you want to handle that. We're not going to promise the clients you're going to see everybody right after a holiday weekend. We give them a range of time that we feel is appropriate. Your staff can take over from there once you open. What if my client's unfamiliar with technology, doesn't have video, they don't have internet, they don't have a website? Easy. We give you a phone number, and that phone number connects that client with our support staff, most of which are licensed veterinary technicians. They are not giving medical advice. They are purely processing the client's payment, getting them in contact with the veterinarians. They can be called and then exchange photos and videos via text message or email for those clients who don't have internet, don't have video capabilities. No liability, because we don't have any contracts or agreements with you. The liability is on us. We're the ones making the judgment call, so it's on us to take on that risk. We have 0 medical board complaints in almost 5 years of doing this. How do I know that our veterinarians will give good advice? How can I trust them? We have high standards on VetTriage, but also we have to trust our colleagues. Our colleagues are doing what's in the best interest of the pet. Our veterinarians are not incentivized to push for emergencies or non-emergencies. That's not the goal here. The goal is actual triage and advice. And it just so happens that most are not emergencies. And so we have strict stipulations for what veterinarians we hire, and we also have to be able to trust our colleagues to make decisions. On the large animal side, the prescription factor here is a non-issue. Most equine owners have medications at home. They just need to know how to use it, or is it appropriate to use it, how often, what dose, etc. So that's not a problem. On the small animal side, we have access to plenty of either leftover drugs from other veterinarians or human medications. We also have plenty of over-the-counter supplements we can use as well, diet changes, wound care, activity restrictions, things like that. So we find that owners actually don't want prescriptions. They want peace of mind. They want advice. They want to know what to do next. They're not looking for medications. And so on the equine side, it's very helpful because clients have access to it. Small animal doesn't really matter because they're not looking for that. We're going to streamline the emergency process for you. We'll package the case. You'll spend less time as an on-call doctor investigating the history. Both the vet and the client are prepped for what to expect. And that's really valuable when we wake up at 3 in the morning with an actual emergency. You know it's been taken care of and packaged for you. Finally, an example testimonial here from one of our doctors. Thank you for your excellent evaluation recommendations for our dog Cruz. You were absolutely correct on your intake and thoughts about how we should support and care for his injury yesterday. He made a miraculous recovery by the morning, running top speed and attempting to pull off a naughty jump on our bed this morning. He's mended to the point where we are certain that a follow-up with our wonderful vet is not needed, although I did speak to the office today. I also congratulated them on their selection and use of VetTriage for after hours. I really can't say enough about the positive experience with Dr. Bercier. Thank you so much. And we get these so many times a day, not just from clients, but also from our partners. They've sent us emails, thank you cards, text messages, thanking us for providing their staff with quality of life, and for our clients loving the platform. This is my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. This is a QR code that will bring you to the VetTriage website, and I will now take any questions you have.